Well, it's time for another Dashing Dan Sporting Adventure podcast. Great to be with you. You can get all the podcasts on Spotify. And I think our previous sponsor, KISS Professional Solutions, John McEncrow and the team, been with me for a couple of years. I've got a new sponsor, Breeny Brothers Brewery. www.breenybros.com, pioneers of the Australian brewing industry, first started brewing in Williamstown in the western suburbs of Melbourne in 1864. And they produce a range of easy drinking mainstream beers that are based on a family recipe from over 100 years ago. And I'm sure my next guest doesn't mind a beer or two. A legend in tennis in many, many different ways. She was a player. She's from a big sporting town, Wagga, and a big commentary town as well. Quentin Hull will tell you every day of the week that you speak to me, he's from Wagga, a Wagga boy. She's been a successful coach. She's an outstanding commentator, one of the best going around as far as I'm concerned. And she's also, and this I reckon, and she'll be able to tell me this, probably her greatest achievement in recent years as a mental health advocate in setting up a program called Rally4Ever, predominantly in a meeting with a young man who used to be on the tennis circuit many years ago. He's been having a lot of issues with his mental health, and the way she's looked after him in recent years is sensational. You can find out more about that on ABC iView on a magnificent Australian story that Louise and Brian did a few years ago. Louise Pleming, welcome to the program after the biggest introduction of all time.
Thanks so much, Dan. That was great. Wow.
Now, Louise, let's start with the mental health aspect. You met Brian Turton back in 2018. He was obviously going through a few issues, and you've become firm friends. Did you ever think you'd become as close as you did from that first meeting?
No, I didn't. This kind of meeting that we had, it was at St. Kenneth's Church when I was back, probably when COVID just hit. Things were kind of, it was just before COVID, and then COVID hit just after this. But I was working at St. Kenneth's, which is a homeless kitchen, and Brian kind of just came up to me and said, "Oh, g'day." And I was like, "G'day." And he's like, "What are you doing here? What are you, bloody giving me food for?" He said, "Why aren't you on the tennis court?" And I knew then that he obviously was very much in love with tennis, and he asked me to have a coffee with him after lunch. After the lunch break, I gave him some food, and then we went and sat down, and Brian opened up this little black bag, and it had two unbelievable, beautiful, those Jimmy Connors silver R2000s or whatever they were. And he said, "Would you play tennis with me?" And I said, "Absolutely." And he said, "Right, well, next Monday at 6:00. And I said, "Hang on a minute." I said, "Just give me your phone and, we'll text each other and we'll catch up and whatever." And he goes, "Well, what do you bloody mean?" He goes, "I haven't got a phone." He goes, "I live in the bushes down near the tennis courts." And he said, "I'll see you then." Anyway, so we initially met. We compromised at 7 a.m. And yeah, when I met him, it was pouring rain, and so we went and had breakfast. I got to know Brian. We played tennis, and I absolutely loved it. He played like Ken Rosewall and Rod Laver all mixed in. He was amazing. And after the hit, he said, "What time tomorrow?" And I was like, "Oh, okay, this is it. I'm locked in." And that was the beginning of getting to know Brian.
When you saw him play, did you think to yourself, he's got a bit of ability, this guy?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, I thought he was a very good player, and I kind of heard a little bit of his story of him wanting to be a professional tennis player, and then obviously his life unraveling. His mum, sent him to the doctors, and he ended up in a mental kind of hospital. But yeah, he was very good, and that was his dream. He really wanted to be a professional tennis player.
There were obviously some issues with his mental health. He did travel the tour, didn't he? And you mentioned to me earlier, players like Wally Masuri's with them.
Yeah.
And it didn't quite work out for him. He never really got over that, did he, Louise?
No, he didn't, and that was quite a few years ago. He wanted to go back on the tour. He had a dream of being a professional player, but it really just didn't work out for him. He was too unwell, and really, I think when, mental health hits and there is a stigma, particularly back then. Now, people, even as Brian said, everyone's got a bloody mental health kind of problem now, which many people do. And there is a conversation we can have around it. But back then there wasn't. And I think that was something that really the system let him down. He wasn't able to get help and everyone kind of disappeared. So there was no kind of structure anymore for him, and the dream was over in a way.
I know watching the Australian story piece, which again, as I say, was magnificent, he would come back and say, I'll go back and beat Rafa, I'll go back and beat Roger. There were delusions of grandeur.
Yeah.
How did you handle that?
Look, I used to just have a bit of fun with it. And so we would actually, when we would practice together, I would say to him, look, you're playing against Rafa now. What would you do? And if you're playing against Roger, and, he'd serve the ball up and I'm like, where's your next shot going? And how can you beat him? And we loved having those conversations. And I think that just kind of took him into that world of what his dream would have been, but also that connection to his passion. He absolutely loved, talking about the greats, and, he knew them all and he knew what strengths Jimmy had and, Pat Rafter had and Pete Sampras and everyone. So it was just a way of us to connect and to, I guess, in a way, make him feel special and make him feel like he was right there shoulder to shoulder with them. That was kind of as much as I could do, and kind of slightly bring him down a little bit when he would say, can you call Craig Tiley and get a wild card for the Australian Open this year? And I'd kind of say, well, I can't maybe do that this year, but if we play some smaller tournaments, we might get there, little by little.
And would he keep at you about that, or would that be enough for a little while and sort of help him with his mental health?
Yeah, of course. I mean, you've just got to keep someone like that really engaged, I think, and for them to feel like someone cares but also listens to them. I think there's nothing more frustrating to be alone in this world and having those conversations by yourself and never feeling like there's any hope ever out there for you.
Louise Pleming is my guest, a well-known tennis identity as a player, as a broadcaster, mental health advocate, and also as a coach. And Louise has set up a magnificent program called Rally4Ever. We're here for Dashing Down Sporting Adventures with Reddy Brothers Brewery, my new sponsor. Thanks to James and Justin for jumping on board, www.reddybros.com. Obviously, meeting Brian, spending a lot of time with him, made you think, well, there are other people out there disadvantaged, finding it tough with mental health issues. I'll set up Rally4Ever. Did you ever think when you started it in Sydney that there'd be 60 of these operations around Australia and growing? How proud of yourself, Louise, are you for what you've done here?
Yeah, it's been an incredible journey. It really has. And you're right, Dan. I never thought we would be in this place where we're at today. And I must say though, I absolutely love it. I really jump out of bed knowing if I'm today, I was at Ultimo with a group of, I would say, maybe migrant women, women facing loneliness, just a whole group of different kind of people, men as well, joining in together with that social interaction at a City of Sydney community group. And we get about 40 or 50 people each week playing pickleball. They don't have tennis courts, so sometimes we play we play tennis, but pickleball is a little bit easier as well, less kind of barriers to it, particularly for older generation. They seem to pick it up quicker, but we've had programs in regional New South Wales with youth. We've got programs in metropolitan areas. We've helped Salvation Army with Foster House, which are guys that come out of incarceration. Look, we don't say no to anyone. We embrace everyone, and we want everyone that has had a bit of a tough ride, or people that maybe have faces turned against them in their life. We embrace them and we want them to come on board. So I love it. From high performance to this performance, it's a different world, and I love it just as much as being out there commentating Sinner and Alcaraz.
You love it even more than that now?
Really, I really enjoy it. I absolutely do, because it's not, making a tennis player be, a better tennis player and hold a trophy. It's changing people's lives, and it's not me doing that. it's them doing that. It's just creating that space where they can pick up a pickleball paddle or a tennis racket and use that as a weapon of kindness. It's really quite powerful to see how these people connect, Dan. We set up WhatsApp groups and then we see the interaction between them, throughout the week, and now they take that friendship from the court, off the court, to a real life situation where they're improving each other's lives. So, yeah, I mean, I loved coaching. I think my last assignment was with Yelena Dokic. And then from there, really, COVID hit and I then went on to kind of start the program. It was just a chance meeting with Brian. So, yeah, it's something I absolutely never thought I'd be doing, but I love it probably more than going to Wimbledon and the US Open.
Wow. Now, you talk about pickleball. We talk in cricket about test matches and T20 cricket. Concern mightn't be the right word, but I'll use it because of your love of tennis. You obviously love pickleball as well. Can they both coexist, and how big could pickleball become?
Well, I think it's the fastest growing sport. I mean, it's the fastest growing sport in the US. Paddle is probably the fastest growing sport in Europe.
Yeah.
It's certainly growing in interest here in Australia. There's no question about it because it's a little bit easier to pick up. The court is smaller, the interaction is really great for social connection, which is fabulous. So people get to meet each other and have conversations and all of that. So it's great for that social connection. It's fabulous. And I think pickleball could become in Australia as big as it is in the US. Absolutely, for sure.
Now, you've talked, there's a lot of topics here, and I'll go back and forth a bit. You talked before
Yeah.
about Yelena Dokic.
Yes.
How proud of her are you? And did you, and I'm one, having been in the media a long time, I thought, with the greatest respect to Yelena, 100 to 1, because of the way the media hounded her, because of the situation with her father, that she'd ever make it as a commentator. I think she's an absolute gun. How
Yeah.
proud of you? How proud of her are you? And did
Yeah.
you think she would make it as a commentator like she has?
Yeah, incredibly. I mean, Yelena, when I was with her, I mean, obviously when, she was having so many battles with her father and she's been through an incredible amount of difficulties, trauma, aggression and all sorts of horrible things from her father. The way she has healed really and recreated a new life for herself is fantastic because she had a lot of pieces to pick up and to change from being an athlete to a commentator isn't easy. And yeah, and obviously English wasn't her first language as well back in the day. So I'm very proud of Yelena and she has an incredibly powerful story of hope and for other people that have gone through trauma as well. But she's a very powerful woman and speaks to a lot of people out there that have had domestic violence and had mental health challenges. So she's doing a great job as well, not only as a commentator, but also, as a speaker. She's very, very moving.
Louise Pleming is my guest on Dashing Down Sporting Adventures for Breeny Brothers Brewery, Australian-owned family business. Profits stay in Australia, as opposed to many top-selling beer brands that are foreign-owned. Have you always loved tennis? I mean, as I said earlier, you grew up just near Wagga, home of Jeff Lawson, Australian cricketer, Michael Slater, Steve Rickson, Steve Mortimer, one of the great rugby league players, Wayne Carey. I mean, it is a cast of thousands. Has tennis always been on the radar for Louise Pleming?
Yeah, look, I think as a young person, I grew up in a small country town called Area Park on a farm. And so for me, we were very isolated. So I played cricket with my brothers. I played AFL football. We didn't know about rugby because we're from, near Wagga. That's AFL.
It is.
Um, and so learning hand-eye coordination, using your feet. I played tennis on the wall in Area Park. Whenever we went in after school, there was a wall tennis court. I didn't get to play a lot unless it was with my brothers or my sisters. And once a year, Vic Edwards, who coached Yvonne Goolagong, used to come out. And that's how, when I was 6 years of age, first had a hit with a guy called Keith Smith. And I think I hit the ball over, I think it was about 60 times. And I was 6 years of age. And he said, I haven't seen that since Yvonne Goolagong. And I think that kind of got into my head that, oh, wow, then watching Yvonne play at Wimbledon back in the day on the black and white TV, I think that really connected to me. But really going through school, I was running, jumping, playing netball, basketball, running, absolutely everything that was physical. That's what I was doing.
Now, Vic Edwards was portrayed, often it can be dramatised a bit on the Goolagong story, which was outstanding on the ABC, that mini-series. Did you get to know him? And what sort of guy was he like? And has he been portrayed unfairly on that program?
No, look, I really only met him very briefly. He was probably an older guy when I came to Sydney. Wasn't on the court that much. Keith Smith was really the main person that impacted my life, and I reached out to him recently, and he came in and he got on the court with all of my Rally4Ever people, and I saw what really connected me to tennis, his love and passion of the game. So sometimes it's just that one individual that really is that inspiration to make you want to make it a life choice. And Keith was that for me. Vic obviously did that for a lot of players, but he was very much about hard work and he was quite a hard man, I believe. And I don't really know about a lot of the other stuff, but obviously, there was something that happened with Yvonne and him and Yvonne has gone on to be strong and to be able to talk about that. But I think his legacy was that he really helped a lot of people in the tennis world, and a lot of players became champions because of him.
You toured the world. How'd you find that? Did you enjoy it or did it become a chore at times?
No, I absolutely loved it. I mean, the only time it became a chore when you were injured and you were carrying an injury and it was painful to play. But, I left Australia when I was 15 and a half and, was in Sydney training. I was living in Wollongong. I was working with Terry Rockefeller in the New South Wales squad, playing every day. Eddie Barclay down in Wollongong was my coach. So I had this great kind of interaction between great coaches and jumped on a plane when I was 15 and a half, went overseas with Justine Brown, another young player, and we went to Italy and her father met us at the airport and stayed with us for a couple of days, and that was it. We then traveled around Europe. Justine went kind of early, but I remember saying goodbye to my mum in in Sydney. She flew down to see me at the airport and she gave me $100. And she said, "Here you go, here's $100. Now look after that and a credit card." And, I jumped on the plane and by the time I got to Fiumicino and then got to the hotel to meet Mr. Brown, I realized I'd left my wallet on the flight and I'd lost my $100 and my credit card. Uh,
Did you get
so
it back?
well, he said to me, "Go on, get on a bus and go back to Fiumicino." Here I am, 15 and a half, and I go back to the airport, and these guys are standing in black suits with big machine guns, and I'm like, I lost my money. Like, I need to go into Lost and Found, and finally I got through, and I went back in, spoke to where the flight attendants had dropped things off, and there was my wallet with my $100 and my credit card, and there was the little bit of luck that I had and went back and yeah, we won the first tournament in doubles and that was in Italy. And by the time we had a sleeping car on the train to
Right.
Kitzbühel to Austria. And, we had our cash that we'd won and we were all pumped up. And so, my $100 had gone to probably 500. But by the time I woke up on the sleeping carriage, they'd sprayed some sort of sleeping gas. And so I fell asleep. And by the time we got to Austria, they'd stolen all my money anyway. But Justine had been smart and put it down her shirt and I'd had a bit of a joke. I said, "What are you hiding your money for?" Like, and, mine was just sitting in my wallet in my bag. And
Yeah.
of course, I lost all my money. So we had to, that was the motivation to survive. For me, it really was about survival. I loved playing, I loved meeting people. And that's what probably made, being a commentator so easy for me because I love talking and I love networking, I love communicating, probably in a way more than winning and losing. And that was probably something from my parents. My family never really focused on winning. It was always, whenever I came home, my dad would ask if I'd been fair. And I think that always was something that instilled into me that, better to be honest and to be fair, to be a fair player than to win, doing the wrong thing. It wouldn't have meant anything to me. So, yeah, that's probably what was instilled, but I loved it. Were there times when didn't win and you weren't making a lot of money and you were taking a bus or a train by yourself and you're 15 and a half traveling by yourself? There was definite times when you felt very alone and very disconnected. We didn't have phones back then. You couldn't text. You had to wait, send a pigeon or send a telegram. Do you know what I mean? It was slow going. So you learned how to be very independent. I think that's the one thing that we learnt when we were young, traveling around the world. When you got to a tournament, you had to find a partner. You had to become very self-sufficient. You couldn't Facebook, players now. There was a lot of kind of angst getting to a tournament and saying, "Hey, I won the last 3. Do you want to play with me?" And, "Oh, yeah, righto." Like, you had to sell yourself. So there was a fair amount of negotiating as well, learning how to do that as a very young, as a young person.
Did Martina Navratilova have to sell herself to you when you played together in a World Cup type tour event in 1999? That would have been an unbelievable experience, Louise.
Yeah, Martina and I, we were lucky enough. We got to play in the world team tennis.
Yeah.
Tina, we were on the same team, and just hearing, Martina's stories and her journey, we became very good friends. And we cemented that friendship when we worked together on ABC doing TV for Hotman Cup. We spent some time together on my boat when I lived on a old ferry in Sydney Harbour. We went out surfing together. We had great kind of experiences together. We both nearly drowned out at Manly, but we had such a good time together. And she's an amazing human being, and what she has done for tennis. I hope people really understand her journey and the difficulties she had coming from a communist country at the time, and all the challenges that she had. Yeah, she's an amazing human being, Martina, and I can call her a very good friend.
You're very lucky, aren't you? Over 50 Grand Slam tournament wins across the 3 disciplines in singles, mixed doubles, and doubles. I mean, I don't think that'll ever be beaten. Is she the greatest you've ever seen?
I think so. Yes, the way she played was incredible. I think she was the person that ignited hope in a lot of players. I mean, obviously, Steffi Graf came after her, and Serena Williams, you would have to say, physically is the best player we've ever seen. Her power, her serve dominated the game. Martina's finesse and the way she crafted her strokes around the court, I think she was the best in that respect. She probably was the best chess player. So I think, yes, in that kind of respect, she wasn't the most powerful. I mean, that was to come later, and that was Serena.
In regard to the way Martina played, I mean, it's not easy, is it? Some players are great singles players and find playing doubles and mixed doubles hard, but it was seamless for her, wasn't it?
Oh, it's incredible. I mean, how fit she was. And I think
Yeah.
she changed the game with her nutrition and fitness and the way how hard she worked. I mean, she worked harder than anyone else. And I think that she started the shift in the way we needed to, get stronger in tennis and get faster. She led the game for sure. I mean, to play singles, doubles, and mixed, there's no one that does that really now and can spend 6 hours on a court, maybe sometimes 8 hours if she had to play singles, doubles, and mixed. And I'm sure she would have done that many times. So incredible. I mean, now the top players really only focus on one discipline because I guess, there's just so much money in the game and there's so many in that entourage. There's a lot to pay. You got to make a lot to have 5 guys or 5 people in your team. They're making a lot of money and it's a big industry now.
This is a could have, should have, maybe would have moment. If she doesn't get stabbed, do you put Monica Seles in the conversation as one of the greatest of all time? We're never going to know, are we?
Oh, absolutely. The way she played, I mean, she was unique. I mean, no one could stand up on the baseline and take time away and hit angles like Monica. So the fact she was two-handed it created so much angle in the game. she would have really hurt a lot of players. There's no question about it. She would have gone on to be one of the greatest.
Louise Pleming is my guest for Brenny Brothers Brewery, www.brennybrothers.com. And their beer is available in cans at many independent liquor stores and on tap at some great pubs and clubs. You're talking about living on a boat. Have you still got the boat?
No, I lost that in one of the in one of the breakups. I've had a few. I'm lucky I've still got a few dollars to have an apartment. And but at any rate, look, if I lose it all, I've made some great friends that are homeless through Rally4Ever. I've always got somewhere to stay. I can pitch a tent somewhere and be okay. But yes, I mean, yeah, that was a passion. I lived on a 65-foot boat in Sydney Harbour, which I, kind of restored, and was a great time getting up in the mornings and having that peace and getting out on Sydney Harbour, kayaking and canoeing, and what a beautiful place to spend time. A little bit isolating at times as well, though, I must say. Plenty of times with ducks and kind of sea animals out there, but no, it was a great experience.
You talked about relationships. You've had a few, you've been very honest about that. Do you think it's been hard to maintain a relationship because you're often away, you did some coaching, and now you're one of the most sought after and respected commentators? I mean, you go to all the 4 Grand Slams. I thought you were absolutely sensational. The ABC, I did it for a long time, as you know. The ABC have brought back the tennis coverage, and listening to you and Andrew Moore and Quentin and waxing lyrical and basically talking absolute rubbish, Louise, if you don't mind me saying, in a very nice way. You're
Yes.
very good at it, but do you think that's hard to maintain a relationship when you're traveling all the time like that?
Yeah, absolutely, Dan. I think that was quite possibly, one of the reasons why I've broken up and not been able to maintain relationships. With the workload that we do, we travel 4 times a year, we're away quite often. And then last year I was asked by the Indian government to go over to India and talk about impact. I was invited to go to Necker Island and meet Richard Branson and be a part of a pickleball forum. And of course, you can't say no to these things, but it is time traveling and it is time away from partners and that sort of thing. So, and also, I think when you really find a passion and you are driven and you give yourself probably more than maybe, sometimes the relationship needs, it is difficult to maintain all of that. And I think it's hard when you are with someone also that is perhaps going through a different time in their life and trying to find what really stirs them. Because when you're cemented in really having a passion and giving your all, and when someone sees you're very dedicated and very happy, and that's hard to kind of figure out sometimes as well when you're with someone like that. So I do understand that, and I lament sometimes, the fact that maybe I wasn't the best partner and wasn't always there for them as much as they needed, perhaps.
How did you get into commentary, and did you take it like a duck to water? You seem to have.
Look, I don't know that I did actually. I think it was one year after I played the US Open, I was watching Pat Rafter, and Pat said to me, "Oh, I just won my match. You got to stay, Louis, until I, you know, keep going." And I said, "All right, well, I'll stay and I'll watch every match." So I stayed there with his family, his brothers, and whatever that were involved in his tennis, and every time he won. So I stayed and stayed until Pat won the US Open. And after that, I was there with Paul McNamee and his group and a whole lot of Australian, Tennis Australia people. And Paul said to me, "Lou, you know everyone and you're always around and you understand tennis. So, well, why don't you come and commentate for the ABC for Hopman Cup?" And I thought that would be great. And anyway, so the next, even though while I was playing the next Hopman Cup, I went over with the ABC and Fox Sport, and I commentated with some great people. Fred Stolle, I will always remember.
Great.
Yeah, and Martina was there, and so many great. Karen Ty was fantastic. Love Karen. So I really was thrown into it. And I remember at the end of that, Paul said, "Oh, you're not very good, but that's all right. You didn't talk about the girls being, sexy enough and pretty enough and whatever." And I said, "What are you talking about?" I said, "I'd lose my job with the ABC." He goes, "No, you have to. We've got to really showcase these women and show that they're beautiful." And I'm like, "Well, there's different ways of kind of saying that. and talking about their tennis. But I must say, I probably wasn't great those first couple of years, but you didn't get any experience. No one taught
No.
you how to commentate back in the day. I think today everyone has lessons in commentating, and they're always helping these ex-pros that come off the tour. There's a lot of education and a lot of help, but I certainly didn't get any.
What do you love most about it?
Love about commentating or
Yeah.
love of tennis?
No,
Think
commentate.
it I think it's amazing seeing the next generation, right? I mean, wow, look at all these youngsters that are coming through. It's unbelievable to see the next generation. There's so much about when you watch these players, how different they are, how much confidence they have as young players now, how they kind of transition and go on to become great players. I mean, Jennifer Capriati was 14 years of age when she won her first WTA tournament. And to see her come back and to present the trophy this year, and we know the difficulties that Jen has had. She's an amazing young woman growing in confidence again. But yeah, to see these young players coming now onto the tour and what they're doing, it's quite incredible. So, and then to see the best players in the world, Arena and Rybakina and Sinner and as Carlos Alcaraz. I mean, these guys, they're taking tennis to the absolute next level. How they push themselves, how hard they hit the ball, how fast they move around the court. It's quite phenomenal to see the change from what we used to see, the tall players back in the day that didn't move. They didn't have the biomechanics like these players have today, the fitness levels. It's beyond. So I love seeing the new players coming onto the tour and what they're bringing.
Doesn't seem to happen as much now, but certainly when I was growing up, and you were growing up in the 80s, we're similar ages. We won't reveal. You never reveal a lady's age. There were a lot of girls who got a start at a young age. You mentioned Jennifer Capriati, Tracy Alston. Her career was ruined probably by injury. Andrea Jaeger, who's gone in a completely different path with her life. Do you
Yep.
think many of them started too early?
Look, perhaps, I think now that's why the WTA have brought on these rules that you can only play a certain amount of tour matches up until you're like 18. I think from, 16 there's an amount and then it kind of goes on. So I think it's more recognizing, what is happening around those players, how much pressure is being applied and who's coaching them and regulating that as well, which we can't really step in and say, hey, you can't have an abusive parent and whatever, because most of these kids, they won't tell you and you can't really extract that information like we couldn't with Yelena and her father. But it is learning. We've learnt so much, and the WTA have got such great wellness programs, and there's, so many contacts now. Kathy Martin and the WTA do an amazing job. So does the ATP with Ruth Anderson at the helm of that with the psychology. So there's conversations that we can have now. We can identify issues earlier, and you're right. I mean, players don't develop mentally, emotionally, and all of that until they're a little bit older. So just allowing them to progress at a slower age, I think that's great.
You've been a respected coach, Louise. Are you worried about the state of Australian tennis? Are our expectations too low with our girls that get to a second round or a third round? And the media would be absolutely delighted by that. And just a follow-up question on that, Alex de Minaur, is the quarterfinals his limit in Grand Slam singles tennis, or can he go to the next level?
Well, look, I think he could have a little bit of luck and he could crack a semifinals one day. I think to see him beat Sinner and Alcaraz in a tournament, even a Novak and even a Zverev, and
Yeah.
they're about the top four that are going to be able to stop Alex. It's hard. I mean, I think Alex can still get a little bit more out of his serve. I still think he doesn't get enough rotation, and there's certain elements where he could impact, get a little bit more power. He's not a tall guy. He doesn't have that trajectory like the other guys have. His speed is incredible. His intensity is immense. His work ethic is incredible. He does all the right things. He plays up on the baseline. He plays a different game. He tries to take time away as opposed to hitting through opponents. He could. I can't see him. I think it would be a very tough ask to see him winning a Grand Slam, but never say never with a guy with a heart as big as Farlap. In terms of the girls, what's happening out there, I think it's incredible. I mean, think about our pool, Dan. We have a pool of 20 million or 25 million people in Australia. The US have a pool over 300 million. Of course, they're going to extract more players. They've got more in the pool with the USTA. I think we're tracking incredibly well. We've got the number one junior in the world, Emerson Jones. She's a phenomenal little player, and she's going to transition onto the WTA player, WTA tour. She's doing incredibly well there. Talia Gibson tracking close to the top 100. Taylor Preston getting to the semi-finals of Tasmania this year. We've got so many great kind of prospects that are doing really well. Maya Joint didn't have a great run here. She was ill at the beginning of the year, which I think impacted her whole Australian summer. 30 in the world, winning 2 tournaments last year, doing great. So, Kim Birrell. And I think the way all the girls are coming together, the camaraderie and how they're sharing, they work hard together in the Brisbane Academy. They all have moved up there. So that kind of intense training and that work ethic together is pushing each other. And I think we're seeing some great stuff. Kristen School, Cape doing well, getting in the top 100. Adam Walton, also, you got a whole cluster of good guys in the top 100. We've got Sam Stosur, Leighton Hewitt, really driving the coaching and those groups. I think we're in a really good kind of situation for where we're at with our numbers and our expectations.
Rennie Brothers Brewery is our new sponsor of Dashing Down Sporting Adventures and tennis legend, because she's been a star across a number of aspects of tennis over the years. Louise Pleming is my guest on the program today. Louise, are you concerned? Again, this mightn't be the right word, because we love battles, we love rivalries, and we've had plenty of them over the years. We saw Roger, we saw Rafa, we saw Novak, and to a lesser extent Andy Murray dominate men's tennis for the best part of 20 years. And do you think Carlos Alcaraz and Yannick Sinner will do the same in men's tennis for the next 10 years? And would you love more players to get at their level? And do you think they can?
Well, I think it's hard, isn't it, when you've got two outliers, and there's no question about it. They're two outliers. I mean, Sinner is a carbon copy, but better, of Novak Djokovic. Everything Novak does, he does a little bit better. Bigger serve, penetrates through the court a little bit more, moves a little bit better. I mean, the guy is incredible. And then is Carlos Alcaraz just a better version of Rafa Nadal? I mean, the way he plays, the power, his physicality is beyond. So, are the other guys matching that kind of level? I mean, we saw the match with Zverev, that 4 hours and 27 minutes in the semifinals, where he had his chance to serve it out in the fifth set against Carlos, but he couldn't. But was it because Carlos had the cramps or had the situation in the third set? I mean, that allowed him to get in. It wasn't going to be a clean a clean sweep. So, I mean, is he close? Yes, he's close. Are we going to see a young guy come through? Maybe Mecic, and, you've got Helga Rune, and you've got these guys that are close, but are they that close? Alex de Minaur, he's close, but is he close enough? I think it's hard. I mean, these guys are just, that one kind of step better than the rest. And I think it just creates such a great interest as well, having this contrast, this battle between the two, because everybody would love to buy a ticket if it's the Grand Slam final of any of the Grand Slams this year, to see one of those players or both of them playing against each other. I think they bring a lot to the game.
Great to watch. With the women, outside Serena Williams, it was throw a blanket on who might win a Grand Slam tournament if Serena was unavailable. Are we still in that situation now, 10 years down the track, or do you think a Swiatek, who does struggle a bit at the Australian Open, or a Sabalenka or Rybakina, I thought was absolutely magnificent, are three that are a bit ahead of the rest?
Look, I think there's a few in the mix, actually, with women. I think that's become a little bit more broad. I mean, Caroline Mukova,
Yeah.
I mean, she beat Rybakina in Brisbane just the week before. And I mean, she's such a talent. She's just sitting there. And then you've got, obviously Arena she can pull it out on a hard court anywhere. You've got Coco Gauff. Jess has been doing really well. Jess Pagula. You've got, obviously, Maddie Keys can win a Grand Slam. You've got a lot of players that have done really well that can push these top players, but I do feel we're gonna see Arena and Rybakina a little bit more often in those big tournaments. On clay, I think we're going to see Swiatek for sure. Iga's gonna be there, and Coco will be there a little bit more on the clay. So I still think there's a little bit more interest and a bit more kind of a mix with the WTA Tour than the ATP.
Just on the clay, Paul McNamee, your colleague on the ABC during the Australian Open, was saying we don't have as many tennis courts in homes nowadays that we used to. Again, when we were growing up in the 70s, 80s, and early 1990s, and most of them were Ontakar. He says if someone's going to build a tennis court at home, and he hopes they all do, that they make them clay courts. What's your view on that?
Oh, it'd be fantastic, wouldn't it? Because the ball bounces higher. So what we're doing is we're putting mod grass courts, artificial grass courts in backyards, and that doesn't relate well to professional tennis. So the ball isn't bouncing high, it's bouncing low, and you play a bit of a different game. You end up slicing more and probably transitioning more, serving and volleying, coming forwards. And that's not what's happening at the professional level. So I understand that, yes, it'd be great. We saw more clay courts. We don't have the clay like they do in Europe. So it's harder to get, more expensive to lay, and it's more expensive to run in clubs. So obviously, mod grass is more cost effective and it's easier. You don't have to clean it, you don't have to bag it, you don't have to water it. So that's the issue with that.
That was always a problem with Ontakar. I did a tournament recently around the Australian Open. You probably heard of it. The Para Standing Oceania Championships, which was at Grace Park in Hawthorn, not that far from the Australian Open in the eastern suburbs. And they were still, of course, bagging the courts because it was Ontakar. And I think it'll be the last year it'll be on Ontakar. But that's how we learned to play, wasn't it, on Ontakar many, many years ago? But sadly, it's probably gone out with the arc as the sport continues to change.
Yeah, absolutely. But have a look at these guys that play on hard court now. They slide, and that's because they've grown up on clay. So that is the advantage. You learn how to move much better. You learn how to be more consistent. It's harder to hit a winner. So you become more, you can rally better. You can hit heavier balls. Like, it just teaches you automatically to be a more professional style player, that as you progress, you become a better player. So for our players that grow up on mod grass, the rallies maybe aren't as long. So it's important that we do get our youngsters to have that exposure to clay early on, so that mentality becomes more consistent and hardened, so that when they do, start to travel, that they know what they're going to get and what they're up against.
Do you think outside Wimbledon and the lead up tournaments that grass is sort of near the end in regard to people getting grass courts at home and at most tennis clubs around the world? I mean, it'll never leave Wimbledon, will it?
No, it's never gonna change. Queens and Wimbledon, never. So I think, in that respect, the British scene will stay very strong. Nottingham, Birmingham, and all the other courts, that have grass will stay that way, very traditional. But I think the cost is very it's expensive. So, for Kooyong, the cost is high, but they have a lot of great members. Royal Sydney here, they still have grass. But I think it's a fading surface. There's no question about it.
Ash Barty, very interesting character. You obviously know her well. How many Grand Slam tournaments do you think she could have won if she had kept playing? And it just tells us a bit about her that, oh, I've done that. I've won an Australian Open. I've done Wimbledon. Time to do something else in my life. She is an incredible and mercurial individual, isn't she, with her attitude to life?
Yes, definitely. Look, I think she would have won a lot more. There's no question about it. She was unique. She was so different with the way she played. She exposed players' weaknesses, and she could dismantle players with her slice and her heavy forehand and the way she served. She had so much variation. She kind of grew up watching male a lot of male tennis players, played with a lot of boys, so she developed a different skill set. And that's what's missing in the game a little bit, that transitional play. That I remember listening to Carlos Rodriguez, who used to coach Justine Henin, who had a one-handed backhand and sliced and did
Brilliant.
all that. And I asked him one time, I said, "What's the next generation of tennis players?" And this was kind of just when Ash was coming onto the scene. He goes, "Someone who can serve and volley, someone who can slice, someone who can dismantle, someone who can have good solid game, but mix it up." And that is kind of still missing a little bit in the women's game because of the power. Like, it's hard to have a one-handed backhand, and it's hard to slice and come in and have good volleys. You've got to set up the plays very well. You've got to have very consistent and good confidence with your volleys. There's no point hitting a transitional shot coming forwards but not trusting your volleys because you don't practice it enough and it wasn't a part of your game when you were, learning how to play. So that is so important to instill that into young people's minds as they're growing and as they're kind of in their early years of learning and coaching. And that comes down to what kind of coaches you have. From the 70s, 80s, we had a lot of transitional coaches, guys that served in volleys, and they're now out there coaching our current players. So we are still, you know, having our players have that capacity and have that confidence, where we're seeing a lot of the Eastern Bloc players, they don't have that and they don't use that. So, yes, I think Ash would have, and I think the reasons why she walked away from the court, she just asked herself, really, why was she doing it? And I think the reason was, you know, she wanted to win a Grand Slam, and when she won Wimbledon, I think she just didn't feel kind of what she thought she was gonna feel. And she's very much a homebody, she's very much a family body, and I think she missed that. And hence why, she's having children now and staying at home and having a very happy home life.
Welcome again to Dashing Dan's Sporting Adventures. Great to have you on board. And our new sponsor, Brenny Brothers Brewery, pioneers of the Australian brewing industry, having first started brewing in Williamstown in 1864. Louise Pleming is a well-known tennis identity, has set up a charity called Rally4Ever, aiming to create bridges between the tennis world and those who are disadvantaged, suffer from mental health. And they've got over 60 operations occurring around Australia and no doubt looking for more. Louise, as a young lady, you identified as gay. Was that hard on the tennis circuit, or because there's so many players that identified as gay, including the pioneer Billie Jean King, were you able to adapt pretty quickly?
Yeah, look, I never really made it a big deal, to be fair. I never ever felt that anyone treated me differently. I wasn't one of those real outspoken kind of, gay and lesbian kind of fighters like Billy. I just felt everyone is at kind of they're free to be who they are. On the tour, there were a lot more girls that were outwardly probably gay because we didn't have 5 people traveling with us. We might have been lucky enough if we had one coach. I was traveling a lot on our own, so we had to create those bonds and friendships. And, Martina was a good friend, and no one ever really judged her,
Mm.
but the business world did. And I was with Martina. We were playing world team tennis, and we were traveling, I think, to New York in a little bus. And she got a message and she looked at me and she had a tear in her eye. And I said, "What's up?" And she goes, "I have my very first," and this was when she was later in her career. And she said, "I have my very first paid endorsement." And I think it was from Toyota. And that was later on. And that's about when the business world and the community was starting to really accept people like Martina and gay people as real role models in the community, which is really sad. But Billie Jean and Martina and all of those people have fought for that. And I was very lucky that I kind of came along after them and people always accepted me and it was never an issue.
There have been rumours and allegations, particularly with AFLW and especially those that started at suburban clubs, that there was grooming of young women if you were to join an all-female club, that you needed to be gay. Did you ever see that in tennis, if you don't mind me asking?
No, never. No, I never felt that at all. No, I think everyone was it was so diverse because there were Russians, Australians, Americans, French, Europeans. I mean, everyone coming from a different background, and it kind of was just a blend. It was the motley crew of the world just playing tennis, and I never felt that pressure at all. Also, we always were traveling in different kind of worlds as well. You never really traveled the same way. It's not like being in a football team where you're all together every week in, week out, you trade together, whatever. You didn't really do that in the tennis world. We're always traveling here. There were 15 different tournaments on across the world at any one given time. No, we were just meeting people and creating friendships, and I have still to this day so many great friends that I traveled with, played doubles with, and created those bonds. So no, I never ever felt that there was grooming at all
Of
in
the
the tennis world.
Yeah, of the 4 Grand Slams, and you get to go to all 4 of them, you're a lucky duck. Which is the best one now?
Oh, well, gosh, I mean, we just had the Australian Open
Yeah.
and it was incredible. I mean, the activations and the amount of people that went and, the amount of people that probably had never been to a tennis event. I was just speaking to someone from Tennis Australia and they said the amount of new people that walked through those gates was phenomenal. 1.3 million people going to watch tennis, whether it was on a screen, having a drink, seeing one of the activations or whatever it was. So, look, I think as a festival, the Australian Open leads the way in terms of new age tennis. Incredible. For tradition, I love Wimbledon. It is absolutely stunning still. The manicured lawns, the green and purple, the floral kind of, all of the hedges and the greens and I mean, it's just stunning, the architecture. So I think yeah, Wimbledon is incredible, but the French has a little bit of that as well. They have a lot of jazz bands and just the clay and the difference there. It's wonderful. And New York, it's just loud and it's a party scene as well.
Yeah.
No, they're all incredible in a different way. So I would say, look, I have to go with the Australian Open in a way because I still have that festive kind of feeling that's bubbling around. It was so great, and there was a few new things that really made it special. I think the 3-week really party kind of that happens, which the US Open do as well. They start that week early, and Australia has taken, some of those things, the mixed doubles, the 1-point shootout. There was a lot of things that kind of do happen in sync, but they all have their own feeling and special kind of little input, and I have to say I love the Australian Open as I love them all in a different way.
Just on the Australian Open, Louise, Craig Tiley has announced the worst kept secret. It was obviously bubbling around during the Australian Open that he's leaving after being the tournament director for 20 years, being CEO of Tennis Australia for 13 years. What will be his legacy, you think?
I think that he modernised the Australian Open and he brought so many people to the game. I think he's really opened tennis up and made it a game for everybody in terms of enjoying it, learning it, being a part of it. I think his passion for tennis and his connecting to the players, I think will be his legacy. The way he embraces the players and makes them feel special. They absolutely did call the Australian Open the Happy Slam, and I think that will be something that will be remembered. If he can turn the US Open into a Happy Slam, I think he's got his job. It's a tough one to fill the shoes there. There's no question about it. It's going to be a different role, but I think he's done a phenomenal job here in Australia.
Now, the Margaret Court, if you like, created controversy among many of the players, female players, for quite a while. Where did you stand on that? And where do you stand on it now? Because the issue seems to have dissipated a bit in recent years.
Yeah, look, I think it has. I mean, when it was a big, loud kind of argument a couple of years back, I know everyone was very anti Margaret Court. I think it was at the French Open when, all the players were saying, I'm not playing on Margaret Court. There's no way. I mean, she's so judgmental, so anti pride, anti gay, anti inclusiveness.
Mm.
And it's sad that she's a pastor and that she is judgmental, that she's not embracing everyone in the community. in some way, I think she is a very good person. She's done a lot of good things for tennis, and she is still a champion, but in my eyes, yeah, her messaging is just not quite right, and I would love to see her just maybe changing some of her views and maybe learning a lesson in her own life as well, that gay people are very caring and very loving and not judgmental. So I hope that she can become a little bit more like that.
I'll forget about the labelling, which I think's been a big issue with her.
Yeah.
I was a bit young when she was at her best, but reading about her, I've always got the impression she was a bit of a lone wolf. Do you think that's right? Do you think that's still the same now, where she hasn't ever been too friendly with compatriots and fellow players who are on the tour with her,
Yep.
even in retirement?
Yeah, I think so. I absolutely feel that. Yeah. I mean, you see Billie Jean and you see all of her friends and
Yeah.
everyone around her. You never see Margaret ever being involved. She wasn't involved with the $1 signing. She wasn't involved with standing up for the tour. She wasn't involved in really embracing change and equality, and I mean, all the hard work that Martina and Billy, she left it up to everyone else to do. So in that respect, I think there's not a lot of respect from the other players of that generation to Margaret.
And before I let you go, Louise, and really thank you for your time on Dashing Game Sporting Adventures for Greeny Brothers Brewery, what does Louise Pleming like to do when she has any spare time between travelling the world, commentating, doing some coaching, and of course, setting up this magnificent foundation, Rally4Ever? I'm sure there's not a lot of time there, Louise, other than, of
No,
course, take your dog for a walk.
yeah, no, I love my dog Walter, but I love
Walter, what a name. One of the great
yeah,
names.
yeah, and I love getting up early in the morning, Dan, and being a part of the Bondi world. The Bondi kind of community has been hit a couple of times now with some pretty horrific situations, and it's great being a part of a group of people that are uniting so well. So I get up early in the morning, I go to Murph, which is a group where an active group down at Bondi Beach at 5:15 a.m. on a Wednesday and a Friday. I do the 440 Club, which is at Bronte. We come together and we exercise and we go for a swim at kind of 5 o'clock in the morning. And then Sunday mornings, we do Savage at 7 o'clock in the morning down on Bondi Beach. And anyone's welcome to join any of those groups. And other days, I go to Elixir, my gym, and I do Pilates. And it's kind of my way of just shutting down, having a break, not thinking about the 25,000 other things I've got to do in the day, having a little bit of time to myself. It's not easy to shut down, but that mindfulness moment is really important for all of us.
That's why you're so fit. That's the secret, Louise. You're looking great, Chuck. Just on Bondi, and you've
Yeah.
brought up a lot of different topics as we've spoken today. Has it recovered from that dreadful shooting before Christmas? And do you think it will ever be the same again?
Look, I think it will be the same, but obviously there's a lot of people hurt. I live in Rose Bay, which is kind of North Bondi right
Yes.
there,
Yep.
and nearly everyone in my community is Jewish, and everyone is putting arms together and really uniting and being strong and having more conversations, and probably in a way like 9/11 in New York, and brought a lot of people together. And I do think that's what it's doing here. We have a very strong chamber. The Bondi Chamber is very strong. I'm a part of that community group, and we're talking about how we can unite everyone. We're going to start a Rally4Ever in Bondi Junction. And so that's going to help people that maybe still are really struggling with what happened. But no, I think we're stronger than ever. The community is really bonding together and really making sure that everyone is feeling heard and connected. And we just hope the government and Anthony Albanese that they're doing the right thing and making sure that we're safe.
And if people want to get involved in Rally4Ever around Australia, what do they need to do, Louise?
Well, if you want to be a volunteer, contact me. I'm on Instagram and
Yeah.
Facebook and everything. If you want to come to one of our programs, and we have such a diverse group that come. We have doctors and lawyers, and we even have a judge that comes from time to time. And we don't judge, because those people might play with a crystal meth addict someone who's struggling with bipolar, schizophrenia, people that live in, social housing. I mean, everyone gets on the tennis court and they become tennis players. We don't label, and, you know, the strong ones in the community lift the ones that might be struggling. So anyone can come to our programs. We obviously do want those people that are really struggling with social connection, struggling with isolation, struggling with loneliness, struggling with other challenges. Come along, you'll be welcomed. Our coaches are so great. They understand, everyone is at a different level with their tennis skill or where they're at in their life. So everyone is welcome. Jump on to our website. They're all on there, all the programs. We're just starting to go into universities now. So we're helping young students that are really feeling like they're not fitting in. We want students to walk away from university having a friendship group, and many walk away not having that. So we want to change that and make sure that they're thriving and inspired because they're the next generation of business leaders.
Not that it's the be-all or end-all, but there's an OBE and MBE in this for you, Louise Pleming. I'd like to thank you very much for joining me on the program today. Louise has been my guest. You can get us on Spotify and Dashing Down Sporting Adventures. And another shout-out to my brand new sponsor, Brenny Brothers Brewery, www.brennybrothers.com. Pioneers of the Australian brewing industry, having first started brewing, it's a magnificent drop in Williamstown in 1864. They produce a range of easy drinking mainstream beers that are based on a family recipe from over 100 years ago, available in cans at many independent liquor stores or on taps at some great pubs and clubs. And it's Australian-owned family business, profits stay in Australia, as opposed to many top-selling beer brands that are foreign-owned. And a shout-out to the owners, James and Justin Breeny. Louise, it's been an absolute pleasure. You've been so good to me during my mental health battles, and may your wonderful program, Rally4Ever, continue, and your great work in commentary, and we look forward to catching up again soon.
Thank you, Dan. It's been great because it's just brought back so many great memories of when we commentated the Australian Open and did radio together. You're a great commentator. You're a great actor and a great community person as well. Keep reaching out to me and everyone else, and I can't wait to see you at a Rally4Ever soon.
Well, you'll have to teach me a lot. It's been a long time since I've had a tennis racket in my hand, but I look forward to it. Thanks so much, Louise. It's been great.
All right, Pete. Thank you.